In the last video, we set up our environment and wrote our first Java program. In this video, we are going to talk about Java variables and data types. So, variable is just a name of a reserved memory location in the RAM. And a data type specifies the type of the data that can be held or stored by that variable. We have three types of variable in Java. We have a local variable, an instance variable, and a static variable. Local variables, which are variables that are declared inside the method or block and that are not accessible outside the class. So now if I come to IntelliJ and write an if block, don't worry about this, we'll talk about if conditions later. But now if I just declare an integer num variable inside this if statement, and after declaring the variable inside the block, if I try to access the num outside of that block, it is not going to accessible. It's not accessible because it says it is a block variable and it says cannot resolve symbol num. So this is our block variable. And then we have an instance variable, right? An instance variable which we declare inside the class body. So this is our class and this is our class body, and we're going to just declare a variable here. Let's say string name, and inside double quotes let's say Khan, right? So now this is our instance variable. Now if we try to access name, let's say, it is also, again, it's not accessible because it is inside the class, and for accessing class instance we should create an instance of that class or an object of that class to get access to that variable. So don't worry about that, we'll talk about that later. But now if I just main object obj and new main, now if I just put obj dot name, let's say it is not accessible because control X control V, now it's accessible. Now we can access the variable name, right, by creating an object of the class main, right? So, and after that we have a static variable also called class variable, and it is not unique for all this instance of the class. It is the same for all the instance of the class because it just loads once or at the time of class loading, and we use them because of memory management. It does not need to load or git load with each instance or object of the class that we are creating. So don't worry about the static variables. We are going to talk about the static variables later when we start working on object-oriented programming, right? So this is variables. Now let's come to data types. So as I said, data type just defines the type of the data that can be stored or can be held by a variable. We have two types of data type. We have a primitive data type, we have a non-primitive data type. Primitive data type are also value type, and means they are storing the value inside the variables, right? And they are predefined by Java. We have Boolean as a primitive data type, and then we have a numeric data type. In numeric we have a character, we just hold one character. We have an integral or integer values and floating point number values. In integer we have byte, which is 1 byte, short, which is 2 byte, and 4 byte, and long 8 byte. In float we can store floating point numbers, and float is 4 byte and double is 8 byte. In non-primitive data type is also programmer defined data types, and they are storing a reference to a memory location that is holding the value. It means they are not storing the exact value. It is just storing a memory location that points to a memory location. And then primitive data types are immutable. It means we cannot change them, we cannot delete them once we create them, right? So now let's come to a non-primitive data type. We have strings, we have arrays, we have classes, we have interfaces, and more. So now let's come to IntelliJ and see this in practice. So let me delete this stuff right here. So now Boolean. The Boolean stores only true or false. If I make a variable of ishome, and I can assign either true or I can assign ishome false. I cannot store integral value in this, like 45 or let's say 45.5, because it is a Boolean and can store only true or false, right? If I just hover on it, it says it is required type is Boolean and we provided a double, right? So we can store false or true in Boolean. We have char. In char or car, we just store a one character, a single character. If I just make a variable of a, and inside this variable a in single quotes I put a, so now this is a character, it is 2 byte, and we just store it in this a variable, right? If I just increase or add another character, it gives me an error, and if I hover that, it says too many characters and a character literal. So a character just holds one character. We have a byte. Now byte is an integral data type. It can stores integral values. If I say marks, and it can hold 120 or 12, it is an integer. If I just increase them by this much, it gives me an error because it says the byte required type is byte and we are providing int, because 1200 cannot be stored in 1 byte memory, so it needs a short or it needs an integer, so that's why it gives me an error. So if I delete this, and it is okay. If I just put 156, it is giving me the error. If I put 155, also give me an error. If I put 145 and 140 and 123, so it can hold some data in range of 1 and 126, I think. And then we have a short, which is 2 byte, and also it is also integral data type, right? If I just say number 1, now I can store values in range of some values. Now this cannot hold this much data because it increased the size of the memory that it can hold. And then we have integer, and it is also an integral data type. It can hold integral data. Now it is 4 bytes, so you can store a large or a long number, right? And then we have a long, which is 8 byte of integral data type, long, and then say num3, and now you can store more values than integer. That's it. So if I put L, so now it is long. So L is for long, so we should put L so that the compiler understands whether it is an integer or it's a long data type, right? Then we have a double, and let's say 45.5, and then we have float, let's say float 1, let's say 3.3, and this gave me an error, of course. Well, let me check double 1, and this gives me an error because the compiler cannot decide whether it is a float data type or it's a double data type. But if I just put F here, so now and the compiler will decide that I will treat with this float 1 as a float data type, right? And double is 8 byte and float is 4 byte, and that's it. Then we have a string. A string is a series of characters in other languages, but in Java it has its own class, right? So in a string we can create strings like name, and inside this name I can put John, right? And also, because strings are non-primitive data type, we can create a string as a last name, let's say last name, and is equal to new string. So this is how we declare a non-primitive data type. But because of mostly use or highly use of strings, we can use the literal of a string as well instead of making an object of a string class. So now I can store a last name, let's say Khan. So now I can store values. If I just write last name and put a dot, these are some methods that we can operate on the string variables or non-data type, non-primitive data type. Let's say we have index of, we have length, we have matches as blank, index of. So we will cover all of these stuff in a separate video called string manipulation, so don't worry about that. So yeah, this is pretty much everything for this video. So in this video we'll learn about variables and data types. We learned about a primitive data type, non-primitive data type. Primitive data type holds the value, they are pre-built, and non-primitive data type are programmable data type. They are storing a reference to a memory location, right? And remember that non-primitive data type are immutable. It means once we create them, we cannot change them, we cannot delete them, we cannot update them, right? We are just pointing from one memory location to another memory location, right? Now suppose here, for example, the name holds a John value. It just stores, the name stores a reference to a memory location that holds John. But now if I change the value of name to, let's say, Kabir, right? And now the name variable is storing a reference that points to a memory location that holds Kabir, but still this John is still in that memory location. After running the program, the garbage collector will come and delete all of the unnecessary used memory, right? So yeah, that is pretty much everything for this video. In the next video we are going to talk about operators in Java. So see you there. Have a good time.